I come from the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, where I lead information and cybersecurity, a big team. So we do a lot of work in working with information analysis, and with regards to this election, as the CSIR, we also do, election modeling, where we are projecting the results in terms of the final election results. Yeah.
Okay. And how long has your involvement been, Doc? Because now we are in the crux of the matter. Just one day to the national polls where everyone will be voting. But now the votes are already happening. We've had our internationals a weekend ago, and now the last 2 days is the special votes. And then on Wednesday, the big day. What has your involvement been? I can imagine you've been working on a lot of research leading up to these couple of days.
Yeah, look, as the CSIR, our involvement in this space dates back to 1999. Me as an individual, I've been at the CSIR for over 10 years now, and I've been involved for quite some time in various initiatives, COVID-19, various other interventions in the country. But with this election, we have started this work, over a year ago, because our work, starts way before the elections, monitoring on social media, fine-tuning our models, and making sure that when this day comes, we are ready to be able to serve the country.
And what are these models that you keep referring to? How do they work? Just explain to us, the people at home, novices, people who are not used to methodologies and how researchers do their things.
Yeah, so CSIR has been involved in building what we call election night prediction models, so to speak. These are statistical and mathematical models that we use to predict or project, so to speak, what the outcome of the results would be as the results are coming in, maybe from Wednesday night. Okay. We are able to project to say this is where the elections may end up at, and try to also look at what the trends have been over the past years, and use that to inform the public, make the public aware in terms of what is happening. And we use different techniques, for these models, so that at least they are as close to accurate as possible.
Okay. Can you maybe go into a bit of detail into these techniques that you're using? And then maybe we can get into your specialty in terms of cybersecurity issues that you're picking up from new or online media platforms like social media.
Yes. So these models, as particularly this election night, how it would work is one of the statistical techniques is more clustering, because we know that in South Africa, people will vote differently, based on different patterns and behaviors. So these models will then cluster, if I can call it that, the voters into different clusters. Okay. And let's say they are in a particular district, and maybe a particular location and stuff like that. So we cluster them around, and obviously depending on particular indicators that might be common amongst the voters. It might be demographics and stuff like that. And based on that, we are able to use the historical data as well as the results as they're coming in to then tell where the election final results may end up at, for different parties, at different voting districts, at provinces, at regional level, as well as at national.
Okay, so that would be on election night or just after the voting polls have closed. Maybe we can look at that at that time. But for now, what have you been looking at leading up to these days? What have you been monitoring, specifically on your part or in your Department of Cybersecurity and Issues of Information on these online spaces?
So as part of our work, CSIR working very closely with SABC, we monitor social media platforms across the board, your Twitter or X now, your YouTube, your TikTok and the likes, Facebook. So, and we have collected data which goes, for over a year now, where we are monitoring sentiments, just to gauge what is the sentiments of the nation when it comes to elections. We look at keywords, like now people may have hashtags like SA Elections 2024. We track that to see, how it is performing. We look at influencers, from the leaders of political parties and the likes, just to check what the sentiments looks like. But we also look at the demographics, from the provincial level, because in our country we know that, for example, let's say in the Eastern Cape, in the Western Cape and Gauteng, the dynamics are a little bit different, even when it comes to social media users. So we look into that. We also check, other things such as misinformation, just to see what we can pick up and assist in terms of authorities in dealing with misinformation and disinformation online.
My understanding, now I could be wrong here, I'm not an academic, I haven't done all the work that you've done. I would understand that patterns and information and data changes over time. I don't know, maybe are there any major changes from the data you started collecting a year ago to what you're picking up closer to the day of election, or has it been a consistent message?
No, definitely. Data is a moving target, right? And it's also influenced by various factors, right? Obviously, now as we are closer to the elections, we see a lot of engagements online. We see a lot of people coming online and engaging around the elections on various aspects. So generally, when we look into our social media trends, just like if I can use a day like today, you would see that maybe between this time and 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock, the activity is high, but obviously during the night, sort of like a lull. So within a year, the same thing sort of happens. And within the past 7 days, just looking at the trends, we have seen, that it spikes up. And considering as well that in South Africa, the number of social media, or let's say maybe online users, it's also increasing. So we see a lot of activities at this time, people engaging about the elections as well.
What are people talking about? Are there any standout topics or hashtags that we can delve into?
Look, obviously the elections, 2024 hashtag, which is the one we track,
SA elections 2024.
Yeah. Okay, of course, there might be different variations to it. Other people might use IEC, elections or elections 2024, but we track across the board. We track various keywords, but for now, what we see a lot of engagement on that, because obviously that's the main topic. We see a lot of keywords about the different political leaders of the parties. Obviously, the political parties themselves will always feature, in the trends, in their different dimensions as well. And then, of course, as there are topical issues that come out now and again, then you see the trend spiking up. Just to give you an example, like yesterday and today we had special votes. So you see that topic also gaining sort of prominence, because that's what maybe for the past 2 days we've been focusing on.
So you pick up these keywords, these hashtags. What do you do with them? Or what are you trying to establish from whatever you're picking up?
Of course, I think we pick them up, and there are various research questions that one could look at. Okay. And one of the most important aspect to look at is the sentiment, right? What is the sentiment around this specific topic? Is it negative? Is it positive? Or is it neutral? Okay. But we also look at the engagement. Are people engaging on it or not?
Welcome to SABC News Live on SABC Plus. I am Dinilohlanga Mekuto. We are at the Rock, the heartbeat of elections 2024 NPE. We are joined by our special guest from the CSIR, Dr. Jabu Motsweni, who's a specialist in issues of information and cybersecurity at that institution. They've been working hand in hand with the SABC on election prediction models, and they're also tracking a lot of social media activity leading up to the 29 May polls. Doc, there's something you said that's quite interesting, and there are words or phrases that always come up when issues of cyber security, online information that is being shared around important events, the issue of misinformation and disinformation. Can we maybe engage on that? What are the differences between the two?
For sure, and we can start a little bit back. People might be used to what they call fake news, yes. Which is a term that is used a lot when people share something that is fake, according to certain people. But nowadays, we tend to differentiate and use misinformation, which is basically sharing information that is wrong or that is incorrect. And sometimes sharing that information, the intention might not be bad. It might just, somebody being oblivious and sharing that information. It could be a simple example like we have about 27 million people who are registered to vote. IEC has printed about 90 million ballots, right? So, and then somebody might say, but there's some problems there, without realizing that we've got 3, ballots that needs to be printed per person. So that can be misinformation. But we also have disinformation, which generally a malicious actor or a person with malicious intentions would craft that message or information to deceive a particular group or the public, for various reasons. So that's what we are dealing with. And one example could be, you take a picture of an election happening in the US or in Pakistan or in India, and you use it as if it's something that is happening in South Africa, with an intention of swaying maybe public opinion or people for voting.
So we could also say disinformation would come from a misinformed person. No. Disinformation is deliberately to share information to confuse or to misinform.
Yes.
But misinformation will come from a misinformed person without the intent,
100%.
But they just share it.
100%. For example, you get the information about a certain incident happening in a particular place, about ballots or whatever the case might be, and you share it because you think it's the truth, but you don't know. But the other one knows deliberately that this is false, and then they spread it, as such.
How do you pick up on these, and what mechanisms do you guys have in place to counter these narratives?
So there's various ways to pick it up. Obviously, the first basic one is about monitoring, because there's, as I indicated, there's about 25 or so million social media users in South Africa. So that's quite a lot. And when we look at our data, we pick up a lot of records. Like just this morning, you will, maybe let's say over the past 7 days rather, there's about 560,000 posts that are on social media that one needs to...
On one platform or just across?
No, across the...
Yeah, 250,000.
560, right?
Okay.
And this is just based on the hashtag elections 2024. So without considering the others.
Huge engagement.
So there's a huge engagement, right? And obviously if you can drill down to other hashtags, the thing will grow. So that's the first thing we do, is to check that. But obviously then you have to pick up some of this information that tends to get a lot of engagements, if you can call it that. For example, there's a lot of retweets, there's a lot of likes. In other words, it has a high potential reach, right?
Okay.
So you pick that up, and then you have to verify it with other sources of information. It could be the fact checkers, that's number one. It could be various other credible sources, let's say such as the SABC, just to check, have this thing been reported in the mainstream media? Is IEC, for example, aware of such information? Have they released a statement about it? And then you are able to verify whether this thing is correct or not. And people, sometimes you also have to use some human-centric elements, because technology does not always reach, let's say, the lower level end of the people. So we also, especially within the CSIR, have some human-centric frameworks that we use.
What would those be? Is it outreach programs?
Look, they are human-centric in the sense that they will focus on the human elements. For example, the language. Because generally in the social media, you find that the dominant language might be English, but you may want to focus on also the people who are not English speaking, Nguni speaking people. Focus on elderly people who might not always be on the social media. So that those are very, very important. But also look at the issues of critical thinking, because generally misinformation targets the thinking part. So how do we engage and create awareness? How do people think? How do they spot some of these things from the source point of view, the dates, the spelling mistakes and the likes?
How effective are those mechanisms, Doc, considering that a lot of people are mostly spending their time on these devices, their phones? They might not have a subscription to a satellite TV station. They might not have data. Maybe they could get something from a friend or a close family member who just shares something. How do they go about in finding out and verifying these things?
Look, I think in South Africa, what we have observed, and if maybe I can just take it a little bit back during the pandemic time, we were not so experienced in terms of these fake news and the likes, where people were spreading it. But nowadays, I think even as a society, as the citizens, there's if I can put it, a lot of maybe literacy that is growing in terms of people being able to even spot them as the citizens. That's just one part. But obviously the tools themselves, they come in handy. There's various tools that are being used, on different devices of the phone, like reverse imaging, the hoax detectors, media bias checks platforms, and all of these are free, right? People could use them to check for themselves whether certain information that they come across is true or not, or whether this image that they are being presented with, has it been maybe posted in the previous election or in an election in Brazil. So there are various tools, but maybe just to answer the issue of impact, it's very difficult to sort of gauge the impact at this stage, but just from a personal experience and being involved in this research, I think we are making progress, although we are not there yet.
Before we close, we can't just go on with this conversation without touching on the buzzword or the buzz term, that of AI,
Yes.
and issues of deepfakes. SABC has been a victim of such. There were videos circulating earlier in the year of Elon Musk endorsing his cryptocurrency, and we had SABC news readers and anchors also being part of those. Come to establish it's a fake video. How do we counter that? What mechanisms can we get from experts like you to try to combat such information?
When it comes to AI, it's a new animal in town, if you can call it that, which makes it even easier for people to generate these false information, including deepfakes. And I think one of the key aspects of countering it is awareness again, because there's nothing that beats voters' education, where we educate our citizens, educate our voters to make sure that they are able to understand, for example, on deepfakes, the issues of looking at the lips, how are these lips moving, how is this English moving, what is the setting around where this person is talking. And of course, it's going to be very difficult, especially when people are using voice only. But as I said, it's always very important to verify, again, whatever you are hearing with other sources, just to triangulate and make sure that you are not taken for a ride in terms of this fake information.
The last issue I want us to talk about is the issue of sentiment. What sentiments are coming through from potential voters or from South Africans on these elections that we are facing right now?
Look, I think there's obviously a number of national issues that people tend to engage on social media. There's quite a lot, whether it's about energy issues, whether it's about service delivery and the likes. So we see that a lot. But I think the sentiments we see is that obviously there are people who are positive about the elections, bringing change and the likes. But of course, we've got a certain section, particularly on social media sentiments, where there's the voter apathy. They think nothing will change and the likes as well. So the sentiments, they vary, especially depending on where they are coming from.
Can we be specific here? Because I picked up some issues on my side.
Yeah.
I saw the hashtag IEC trending. I was looking this morning. IEC load shedding was trending.
Yeah.
Obviously, because of what was happening in Mthatha.
Yes.
Mthatha was trending. I think Zuma, MK Party was trending, Ramaphosa was trending,
Yes.
Malema was trending. And these politicians always seem to make the trends list on these issues. Are there any other hashtags that you picked up on your side?
Look, there's quite a lot. And let me put it this way. Just like when it is going to come to the elections prediction, you will find that the biggest three parties, in the country, they will always feature in some of these trends. We will always see that. And obviously, as I indicated, the leaders of these parties, for various reasons, for example, maybe they made a particular statement, and people are now dealing with that. When the president, for example, speaks on national TV, and then there's always going to be some interest and sentiments in that. Obviously, different parties will trend for various reasons, which obviously, as a researcher, I don't necessarily get involved in that.
Is there anything else before we wrap it up, Doc, that maybe a message to the public to be vigilant on these issues?
Yeah, and look, I think in the digital age, it's very important for us to always be aware. Whenever we are faced with information, especially online, we need to think before we share. And if it sounds too good to be true, then it is generally not true, so we should not share it. And above all, if we don't know, let's check with the reliable sources.
Thank you for joining us, Doc. I think it was a very informative conversation. And as you said, people must always be vigilant. Think before you share. And that's all from us today on SABC News Live. There are more programs coming up, so stay tuned on SABC Plus and spread the platform amongst your friends and family and let them know that SABC is on the ground bringing you the latest and the best information concerning this huge event of NPE 2024.